Okay, it's 6 p.m. Monday, December 19th. This is a regular assembly meeting. It'll be our last regular meeting of 2022. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Mark,
Here.
Donna,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
David,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Jeff.
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly this evening with Member Kinsinger zooming in. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
What?
of the United
States
States
of America
and to
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us down to item 3 on this evening's agenda, and that's approval of minutes from the December 5th regular assembly meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes if there are no changes.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we approve those minutes. Item 4, amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to this evening's agenda? Seeing none proposed by assembly members, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of tonight's agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. There are no public hearings tonight. And item 6, bid awards. There are no bid awards. Item 7 is persons to be heard with items related to tonight's agenda. And there's a 5-minute limit for this. Is there anyone zooming in for that, Clerk Thompson?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience like to participate? Glow?
Good job.
Do you hear
Oh
me,
my
Glow?
gosh, yes. Here, hello. I didn't know how to do this. I am actually would like to talk to a couple of things on the agenda. So items related to.
You're on.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for tonight. 15A under new business, I'd like to just speak briefly to the shared fisheries business tax program. I'm hoping for a yes vote on that resolution. It's very important to our area here in Petersburg and the surrounding area. So this is the one that encompasses, I believe, Kupernoff and Cake. So just a shout out for that one. And then I'd also like to speak to 15B, encouraging all of you to vote yes on releasing the ARPA funds to support the education incentive program. I believe that it's the right thing to do. Just to give you a little perspective, as Petersburg parents, we are not looking for a free ride. We do have a lot of skin in the game. As a parent of a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old who's in kindergarten, my annual cost for childcare is roughly $23,000 a year. I have full-time daycare for both. And the older kid who's in kindergarten is, she's in kindergarten during the day, 5 days a week, but I have to have full-time daycare. And I also have her in 2 days a week after school program just to ensure that she has a spot when she ages out of daycare in a few months. So I have a lot of skin in the game. And these ARPA funds have the potential to enhance and continue quality childcare here in Petersburg. So I'm hoping for a unanimous vote yes to show support for these essential childcare workers. It's really the right move. So thank you guys.
Okay, thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify? Please state your name and who you represent, please. And here's a 5-minute limit.
Good evening, Assembly members. I'm Katie Homeland. I'm the Youth Program Coordinator for Petersburg Medical Center. I am also the co-founder of Kinderskog Nature Program and a member of our Early Childhood Task Force, which you helped appoint this spring. I'm here tonight to also encourage you to vote yes on releasing the ARPA funds to the Education Incentive Program. The tiered structure of this incentive program will encourage early childhood education professionals to continue with their own education career, with the goal of having more early educators able to enrich the lives of youth here in Petersburg. As a child care director since 2018, I can say with certainty that not having enough staff with the qualifications to be a child care associate for our licensed programs has created undue stress and has contributed to the instability of our child care programs. I was the only person approved by licensing to keep Good Beginnings Preschool and Kinderskog open for the 2 years at the height of the pandemic. The only person. Licensing requires at least 12 semester hours of early education credits, a CDA or a Montessori type certificate in order to meet the requirements to be a child care associate. And despite having incredible staff members, I literally have award-winning staff members at my program. They have hit a barrier with continuing their own educations because we are incredibly short-staffed and they cannot take the time away. And because they have been horribly underpaid and are unable to afford the expense of higher level education. This incentive package will help to reduce those barriers and will put more educators in the position to keep our childcare programs open while expanding our programs to meet the needs of our community. Something that I always tell my Scoggies is good leaders make sure the whole group gets there. We accomplish that by checking in with one another, by listening and by supporting one another. The best leaders though, the best leaders help to raise up future leaders. And this is our assembly's opportunity to be the best part of our community by inspiring, motivating, and helping to facilitate a new group of early education educators and leaders by implementing the Education Incentive Program. Thank you all for your consideration. And as always, thank you for serving Petersburg.
Thank you for your testimony this evening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Tremblay. I'm chair of the Early Childhood Education Task Force. Thank you for your time and for hearing from some of my fellow task force members. We've been talking about this program for a while and are looking forward to implementing it in the new year. We're here to answer any questions. When we voted on this item as a task force, it was a unanimous yes among those who were at the meeting and then emailed or weren't able to make it and emailed their vote. The expertise in this group is extensive. We have over 130 accumulated years as professional childcare experts and youth programming experiences. So we ask that you listen to those experts who are excited to implement this program and vote yes to fund the education incentive. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I guess, yeah, just come forward and state your name and who you represent.
My name is Becky Charland. I am with Petersburg Medical Center. I am also Share Coalition Early Childhood subgroup. I am on our local child care task force, along with many other spots in the community that's volunteering. No longer have children in childcare. However, I do know the benefits and the outcomes of having reliable, affordable, and really secure childcare. My 3 children have gone through childcare and couldn't have done it without them. I'm hoping everybody here votes yes on the proposition that's coming up. If it does go through, I will be the one through Petersburg Medical Center that will be administering the grant or the program. So here as well, if you have any questions, but I do hope everybody votes yes. It's very crucial. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the video that was sent out to you, but it means a lot. We can't wait for, the state or the federal government to do something. We need to act now. 81% turnover rate in 2 years is huge for children. And having children with these adults that are there long-term is very, very crucial. So urging you guys all to vote yes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your testimony this evening.
It's time to mention a non-related, non-agenda item.
Okay, that will be on the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
So this is just related, and you might be, I don't know if anybody, is there anyone else who would like to speak on or related to tonight's agenda? Okay, yeah. You probably took a read on that before I did.
And now for something completely different. My name is Joshua Adams. I represent myself and you guys because this is an issue that has kind of gone underneath the radar for the last year. And it's about a purloined judgeship. I thought I'd just mention this publicly now. It might be a good time right at the end of the year. After the judge, the superior judge in Petersburg retired earlier this year, the actual judgeship was illegally moved by the judicial branch over to Ketchikan. This belongs to Petersburg and Cake. And we had this for decades. We had that superior judgeship since Ernie Haugen in 1982 labored tirelessly for 2 years to get an upgrade from the pre-existing district judgeship here in Petersburg. He sacrificed the district judgeship to get a superior judgeship, which we have enjoyed for the last 40 years. And we just lost it this year because of some shenanigans going on and the judiciary. Now, this is a violation of the separation of powers doctrine. Judges can't do that. They can't just pick where they want to have their judgeships. That's the legislature. And this is something that's being fought in court single-handedly by an attorney right now. And I think that we need to show at least a minimum of support. Please adopt a resolution. Because the attorney, Fred Treem, is working on this on our behalf pro bono. He's not asking for a nickel from anyone. And he's got his hearing on the 3rd of February. If you guys adopt a resolution to at least say, hoorah, we don't want to have our judgeship stolen from us, which is what happened, then that shows that at least we're on the same page. If we don't, what that means is nobody cares, and it can just go over to Ketchikan if we want to. And then nobody gets a day in court here in Petersburg or Cake. I know this sounds really subtle and it's not a big deal because, well, the judge is generally somewhere else anyway. But what this means is that you can't have your day in court in Petersburg from here on in. Now, the very least that they can do is they can give us back our district judgeship. Right now, we only have a magistrate. So if you have something, some legal business here in Petersburg, you have to go to Ketchikan. Legally, you have to go to Ketchikan to deal with that. So I'm asking you as the assembly to adopt a resolution on behalf of Fred Treem so that he can at least advocate for us. That's all I'm asking. It doesn't cost you a nickel. Please adopt that resolution and look into this a little bit further. He had a hearing recently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information. It's the first I'd heard of it.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Himshoot. I'm the representative-elect for House District 2, formerly House District 35. So your representative until now has been Jonathan Christ-Tompkins. He's still your representative until January 3rd, and then I'll be sworn in on January 17th. So I'm very much looking forward to the work ahead in Juneau, but I wanted to get back to Petersburg. This is my 4th visit, and I wanted to introduce myself once again and to meet the new assembly members, Ms. Marsh and Mr. Newman, and also Mayor Jensen. Our paths hadn't crossed until tonight, so I'm pleased to get to meet all of you. Just to help you know who I am an educator in Sitka. I'm a nationally recognized teacher. I have been on the assembly in Sitka only for 2 years, and I did just step down from the assembly in order to go to Juneau, so I did not complete my first term, but I am a deep believer in the value and the importance of local self-governance. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I have an idea of how much work it is. So thank you for your role here in Petersburg. This, I think I mentioned already, it's my 4th visit, I think, to Petersburg in just about half a year. And that's been one of the gifts of this campaign and this process to get to know your community, is that I've gotten to come here. I've wanted to for a long time, but it takes time and effort to get to Petersburg, like so many of our communities in Southeast. And so this year I was able to make that investment for the purpose of campaigning, but it has been amazing to get to know this community. And so some of the things that I've noticed that I think make Petersburg unique from some of the other communities in the region is the hardworking, tight-knit feeling that I have when I come to your community, along with diversity. You walk downtown and you see UFTA signs in the windows, and then you look down and you see form line in the sidewalk. And that's a community that knows its cultures and values its cultures. And I really, really appreciate that here. I I feel like Petersburg is a very independent and can-do community. I see people working really hard in this community and valuing hard work. And I have a lot of respect for that. I spent several hours in your schools on my first visit. As a teacher, my sort of entree into a community is to go into the schools and see what does the school look like, and that tells you a lot about the community. And it was incredible the time that I got in your school and what I see happening there. And I think you see that in your outcomes also. Your schools are doing very well by traditional measures, but also by things that we don't always think about, like the well-rounded education that you're providing. So that's a hallmark of your community. And then I wanted to add that in my visits here, I'm hearing some repeated things that I hear across the district, like our ferry service is something that is broken and needs to be worked on. And so that has landed well with me because I'm hearing it everywhere. Some issues that I'm hearing about in Petersburg, and I'll be meeting with your administrator again tomorrow to talk, I guess, more concretely about what we need to be doing ahead, is we need to be thinking about the healthcare situation in Petersburg. That's an important part of any community. I know you guys are at a crossroads. Fishing is always going to be a topic. I have a meeting later tonight with some people to learn more about fishing. As an educator, I have a lot to learn there, and I've been getting a lot of support from the fishing community to learn what I need to learn. And then I already mentioned your schools, and you're already very successful in your schools, and I hope that you can maintain that. And I think there's more that the state can do to help you help your own schools. And I have a good beginning relationship with Senator Stedman, and I'm very much looking forward to working with him. I think that independent, self-sufficient side of Petersburg can make you set some low expectations for your state legislator. You're already getting it done as a community, and so it's a little bit hard to have high expectations for the person who goes to Juneau. I hope that I can improve that for you, and I plan to work very, very hard for our entire district. So I wanted to make sure you all knew how to reach me, so I'm going to give you my phone number. I am currently not yet in an office, and I don't yet have staff, and so please take this number and use it as you need to, but know that I'll be a little bit more responsive starting in January when I have some support systems in place. But my number is 738-6744. And I hope that you'll use it and stay in touch. And I look forward to meeting with the administrator tomorrow. I also have some office hours set in the morning at a local establishment. I think it's okay to name it, right? So Salty Pantry tomorrow morning. I had said from 9 till 11. Jonathan happens to also be in town. He will be there. I got called into a meeting at 9, but I will be at Salty Pantry at least from 10 till 11. So 738-6744. And then in January, you'll have more contacts once I get my legislative number and email and all that set up. So thanks for your time.
Thank you for your visiting us this evening. I look forward to working with you in the next few years. Okay, anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, no one has called in, Clerk Thompson, or zoomed in?
Oh, hang on. Well, there is no hand raised.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll move on. Item 9, boards, commission, and committee reports. There are none. Item 10, consent agenda. There are no topics there this evening. That brings us to report of other officers, and we have a summary of the SEPA board meeting from December 8th. Assemblymember Lynn will provide a report regarding that meeting. So Member Lynn.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Carl take the lead here, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
Team effort.
Mayor and Assembly, Assembly Member Lynn and I did travel to Ketchikan on December 8th for the SEPA quarterly meeting. The December meeting is always a large one, a lot of things on the agenda, including budget. So I'm just going to go through the report and read it into the record. And if there's any questions, Member Lynn and I can address those. So the CEO retirement, SEPA's CBO Trey Actison announced his retirement to the board in October. And that would be effective at the end of this month, at the end of the calendar year. The board unanimously appointed Robert Siedemann, who is the Director of Engineering and Technical Services for SEPA, as the acting CEO until such time as the permanent position is filled. The board scheduled a January Zoom meeting to take the next steps in filling that position. The board approved the 2023 operations plan. The operations plan is a very extensive document that guides the agency and the member communities on the way through the next calendar year as far as operations go and operation of the lakes. The lake levels in both Tyee and Swan are essentially full as we go into the winter. This is a result of an above average snowpack earlier in the year and slightly above average rainfall coming into December. One of the items that is watched very closely by the north end communities, Petersburg, Wrangell, is the Tyee Lake guide curve. As Tyee drafts during the winter, which means draw down from power production, the power sales to Ketchikan are curtailed when the lake level reaches what is termed the curtailment curve. And those sales only start again when the lake rebounds in level to be above the sales curve. There are two curves that mirror each other. They're 10 feet apart. And this allows the water that's in Tyee to be sure to meet the firm power needs of Petersburg and Wrangell out of that lake, and doesn't allow us to end up in a situation that we had in 2019 where the drought caused some very hard times on the north end. At the bottom end of the winter draft curtailment curve in Tyee, there's still be 13 feet of water in the lake above the FERC draft limit and 5 feet above the board approved draft limit. That keeps enough water in the lake to allow for any emergencies, but it is a kind of the guidance on when the agency will start to curtail their production when the lake gets low. And 13 feet below the bottom end of the curtailment curve gives us approximately 2 months of reserve power for the communities. The board did approve the completion of a rate study for the agency. Prior to the submarine cable failure, the board had been discussing rate increases, but the cable failure placed some urgency on the need to evaluate existing revenues and future revenue requirements to serve debt service caused by the large cable project. The board earlier this year approved the contract for a rate study, and a draft rate study was presented and approved by the board. In the meantime, while that rate study was ongoing, a $13.5 million bond for the submarine cable was finalized, as well as a $5.9 million bond to construct a permanent agency office building in Ketchikan. The board has always taken a position of very small increases in rates over time rather than 1 or 2 major increases, and that continues to be favored by the membership on the board. The rate study showed the board that the debt service for large projects requires additional revenue to be generated. Additionally, levelized payments into the renewal and replacement fund in lieu of funding full depreciation and annual transmission line clearing contracts have increased revenue requirements quite a bit. The board is resigned to the need for wholesale rate increases to cover capital projects and operational needs of the agency after decades of rate stability. It's really hard to see that rate stability be in the past now with future rate increases seemingly in front of us. The rate study did provide a model, however, where actual expenses every year at the end of the budget, expenses and revenues can be entered into a spreadsheet and will update the agency's understanding of financial health, revenue requirements going forward. That update can be used to determine if future rate increases will be needed as the budget is being developed each year. As a result of the rate study, the board did approve a wholesale rate increase to the municipalities of 1/4 cent per kilowatt hour, much like last year at this time. The current wholesale rate of 7.05 cents per kilowatt hour will increase to 7.3 cents per kilowatt hour beginning in January of 2023. The board also approved the award of a load growth study, which will be completed in 2023. The study will give the CEO and the board a much better information to make a decision on a beginning of a new hydro project. That the load growth study will look at all the communities in the agency, the member communities, and factor in what kind of growth that we will see in the near future And that study and that information helps the decision-making on the next large project for SEPA. The board did approve the 2023 budget. Very large document, well put together. Supply line problems in 2022 were a large factor in establishing the new budget. 12 of the 2022 projects that were scheduled to be completed were carried over into this next year as a result of supply chain issues. And some of those projects with specialized electrical components may even go into 2024. 9 new projects were approved by the board. The board also approved a new 3.5-year collective bargaining agreement between the agency and the IBEW. This covers all of the employees that are out at the project, Swan and Tyee Lake. And FERC relicensing, this is an issue that's coming in front of the agency here in the near future. Both Swan and Tyee Lakes are going to have to go through a relicensing process here in the next 5 to 7 years. And so the board's discussion centered around the possibility of combining the 2 projects together in one relicensing effort, which will save a substantial amount of money. That's not a done deal yet, but the CEO and staff are looking into that and will be petitioning for that to happen. In addition to that, the board also discussed the need to hire engineering staff to work on that relicensing. It's a very huge and expensive process. It's expected to take 3 to 4 years and cost upwards of $3 to $4 million. So additional staff will be needed so that they can get through that. And lastly, the board approved a contract with BDO USA LLP for a 3-year contract for auditing services. So it's a very full agenda, lots of interesting things. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you for the report. Member Lynn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple of things I'd like to point out is that load growth study here in Petersburg for the last 3-4 years, we've been experiencing about a 5% increase in loads annually. And one of the discussions we've had as a board is that of course occurs between all 3 communities. But then we have changes like electric cars coming in, but although at the same time we've had, some improvements and efficiencies in lighting and some other things. So the load growth study is really going to be important, I think, also from the standpoint that, that we peaked out very closely last year, right, Carl, for a few days. In other words, we could not get any more power from SEPA. All 3 communities were peaked out with all generators running. And the question that we're really wrestling out, hopefully this load growth study is going to help us with, is at what point in time do we begin to invest in a new facility? And when we do that, we're talking $100 million to do this and probably 10 to 20 years to bring it online. So it's not an easy decision. So, but that's what a lot of this background information is intended for. The only other thing I'd point out is that we're having supply problems just like everybody else is. We had over half of the projects that were extended that were to be done this year are going into 23. And then there's several of them that go to 24 because we simply cannot get the parts. And they're on order, but they're not, the project's ready to be done, but you just can't get the parts to finish them. And so I suspect we'll have that problem, and the equipment we have, the switching gear and that type of thing isn't something like comes off the, you can get off the shelf. It has to be made. So it's something we're watching really closely, at least the board. I know the board, Carl, and all of us are. And here in Petersburg, I know Carl's having the same problem. And I'd like to just add that as a.
Okay, thanks for the report. Any questions of Member Lynn or Mr. Hagerman? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very in-depth report. We have on here under the rate study approved, it talks about a $5.9 million in bonding to construct a new office building in Ketchikan. So does that mean it's going to go out to a bonding authority to pay for it, or does that come out of the SEPAs?
We used the bonding authority to put it in when we went for the increase in the cable. And it was put in as part of that, as part of that. And the reason that the board decided to go that way was that the rates for the office space in Ketchikan are a little over 300,000. It was going to a little over 400,000 starting next year. And when you look at that, it doesn't make sense to continue that. The board then decided it's time to move on to our own facility because essentially it's paid for in about 15 years or a little more. Anyhow, that's where that came from, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up, we've seen in the news where I guess Metlakatla has money, or they're gonna extend the cable from Ketchikan to Metlakatla. So will that affect our electrical rates in Petersburg, or will that just add more customers to the load that would defer the cost or defray the cost to the already existing customers?
We should have absolutely no effect on the rates that we establish or anything like that. There's a couple legal questions involved with this, which I'm still questioning myself. One of them is that the tie between Metlakatla and Ketchikan is is solely with Ketchikan, not with SEPA. And so Ketchikan would have all the responsibility associated with it. The other part of that is that it's for, my brain just lost me, not just, it's not for the hydro, it's for the,
Band.
go ahead,
Broadband.
Carl.
I think it's been sold as a broadband project
Right.
more so.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Hagerman or Member Lynn? Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you. So in the 2023 operations plan, it is designated that it seems like the surplus power is sold to Ketchikan. How much is that, and how much revenue does that generate for this fund? Or is it just, if there's excess, then we sell it to Ketchikan, and how frequently does that happen?
Depends on the year. It's not a pat answer, and it's based on the inflow into that reservoir. And as long as Petersburg and Wrangell are protected out of, then rest of the power can be sold to Ketchikan. And, some years when you have a lot of, rainfall or snowfall, you have a lot more power you can sell. And I would add, it makes a tremendous difference in our costs if we can sell that to Ketchikan, so that we're totally utilizing those reservoirs. What it does is that since Ketchikan, by selling it to Ketchikan, then that keeps the rates for the other all three communities down, really, particularly, and it benefits both Petersburg and Wrangell from the standpoint that although ties our responsibility, the fact that they're paying for part of the power out of that helps reduce our rates too. So it's a win-win, I think. As long as and that's the reason for what Carl talked about, for as long as we have the reserve in the reservoir to protect our interests. Carl, you had a question.
Mr. Hagerman?
Yeah, just another point. So to answer your question directly, SEPA sold 21,000 megawatt hours of electricity from Tyee Lake to Ketchikan in calendar year 2022. Even that's a lot of power, to head south. But even with that number, we spilled over 50,000 megawatt hours from the projects this year. So there's a lot of excess power that we can sell. And back to Member Mucci's question about Metlakatla, that Metlakatla is essentially another customer of KPU, not of SEPA, but of KPU. So the power sales agreement is still in place and in force for the member communities, Petersburg, Wrangell, and Ketchikan, and Metlakatla is seen as a customer of KPU only.
Yeah, add one more part to that is that we've also been talking what we call interruptible loads. Interruptible loads being like a cruise ship pulls into one of the communities and you can plug into the power. And if we have excess power and you can sell it for these interruptible load, again, it provides more benefit, more dollars into the communities too, and helps pay for the projects. And we've been looking at that with some, in depth, look at that to make sure that we can take care of not only the communities, but then we can sell the rest of that power. And those are still yet to be determined. There's lots of work in that.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Kinsinger?
Yes, Bob or Carl, has there been any investigation into adding an additional turbine at Tyee or even raising the pool level at Tyee?
The answer to that is yes. We've been looking at, or have started looking at adding another turbine at Tyee. And we've also been talking about looking at the FERC limits, and I don't want to get into the technicals of that, but seeing if it's possible to reduce the technical limits so we could actually draw more out of those reservoirs than what the FERC allows us to do right now. But that requires some quite a few engineering technical studies. And in the last discussions we had, what we wanted to do is, I think, to tie, rather than to spend extra money and tie that and to do separate studies on it, we're thinking right now, our thought process is to tie that with the relicensing, and that's going to have to start here about next year. And so if we can tie all that together at one time, I think that'll be much more efficient.
Okay, any other questions on this report? Okay, thanks again for that report. It's always interesting to listen to how that organization is working still. Okay, that brings us to item 12, the mayor's report. It's only one item on the mayor's report. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all the residents of Petersburg and actually everywhere, people everywhere. On behalf of the Petersburg Borough Assembly, we wish you a warm and Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year. And hopefully everybody has a good 2023. With that, and there's no written manager's report today. Trying to get back to the page here. So anyone have any questions of the manager on any topics? Okay, seeing none. Unfinished business. Item A, the only item under unfinished business this evening. It's ordinance 2022-16. This is an ordinance repealing chapters 4.26, 4.29, 4.31, and 4.32 of the former City of Petersburg Code and amending chapters 4.25 and 4.40 to account for borough formation. If approved in 3 readings, and this is the second reading, or is this the first? No.
You're correct. It's the second.
And so no public hearing on this evening?
Oh, we should have a public hearing. We'll do it January. Sorry.
Okay, if this is repealed, it will be updated and moved to Borough Code. Ordinance 2022-16 was unanimously approved in its first reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lynn and member Marsh. Any discussion? And we will move the public hearing until third reading.
January 3rd. Yes, sorry about that.
No problem. So if there's no discussion, the clerk, please call a roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, the ordinance passes unanimously in its second reading. Item 15, new business. Resolution 2022-23. This is a resolution adopting an alternative allocation method for the fiscal year 2023 Shared Fisheries Business Tax Program and certifying that this allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fisheries business activity in FMA 18, it's the Central Southeast. Each year we approve this, and this is very similar to what we do every year, but we have to adopt this. And Finance Director Tao is requesting approval of this resolution. So I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Newman. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott, Jeff,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes unanimously. Item B under new business, excuse me, Education Incentive Program. The Early Childhood Education Task Force requests Assembly approval of an education incentive program for local childhood education professionals using $40,000 of the funds previously set aside by the Assembly for the local child care issue. And then we voted on this, and it's ARPA funds, so it's money that we do have to spend. I would entertain a motion to approve this incentive program.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Fine Walsh. Any discussion or questions? Member Marsh?
Yes, thank you. I struggle with this. I think anytime that government is involved in private enterprise, there becomes a very fuzzy dividing line as far as what would be required down the line. I do appreciate early childhood educators. I am astounded by the cost annually. It is steep. And I understand the need for families to do what families have to do to provide for themselves. I'm not convinced that this $40,000 would be able to be monitored for its use. Let's say it's given to employees based on the different tiers. And, I appreciate Brian Holst and his information, and Chelsea, your work with all that, and Katie and everybody coming together to provide the information that's out there for this. But I am not comfortable with it, nor am I comfortable with encumbering the borough to provide for these funds if subsequent grant funding doesn't come through. I know that's the goal, is that it's funded eventually by grant fund. So I'm struggling with this issue.
Any other Assembly members have input this evening? Member Lynn?
Yeah, if I have a couple questions for the task force members, if they're willing. One of them has to do with if we approve this money, how are you going to measure it? And what kind of how many people do you think are going to be in favor of it or take it? What's the turnover of our, of the people we have in the child care industry right now? Some of those questions, if you would address them, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to give a stab at it, and then if I don't answer it to their specifications, they'll come correct me. So the $40,000 came from if the full maximum, every single person that was qualified for receiving this benefit applied for and received it, they would. So that's where the 40,000 came from. As Becky mentioned, we do have an 80% staff turnover within a 2-year time span. And so our hope is to reduce that, which Juneau in fact did show that. And so I guess there was another question in there about
Do you have a way to measure it and to be able to report at the end of the year as a success or not? Or
yeah, so that's a really great question. That'll be part of what's so nice about implementing this while the task force is still meeting, because we have 3 heads of 3 separate childcare programs, as well as the person who will be administering the program already in the task force. And so they will be putting together an application process. They'll be putting through, so we'll be able to see first off how many people apply for it in the first round, and then if there's an increase in the second round. And it is kind of if you apply and you're eligible, you receive it. And so then we'll see from that, we'll be monitoring it as a task force and see how many of those folks then stay within the field. And again, this is somebody who can stay within the field. It doesn't mean they have to stay necessarily at that center. So if their situation changes, their own schedule changes and something else. So I guess, is that kind of the question you're looking for? So we'll be looking at who applies for it in what tier, and we'll be seeing after the first round what the second round looks like, and see if they're still within it, if they're still eligible, what kind of programs they're applying for. And that's all information that we'll be gathering as part of the application, most likely, but that's a part of the nitty-gritty stuff that we'll just have to be figuring out kind of as we implement this new thing. Did I miss anything? Yeah.
Any other questions while they're here? Or-
yeah, I explain a little bit about the qualifications. I know there's a basic and then there's a one, and I can't remember all the levels that you had to go through.
Are you talking about the levels on the
Oh,
actual tiers?
yes.
I don't have it in front of me, Member Lynn. So there is a 3-tiered system though. So the first tier is essentially your kind of entry level. And as long as you're meeting, so for state licensing, a full-time childcare employee has to have 24 hours of continuing education, training, whatever it might be. And then, or you can have a CDA to be on tier 1, 6 early childhood seed credits. And it says on here similar to seed level 6 and 7. And that's an extra $2,000 a year that you would get for completing those trainings, taking the time to do that. Tier 2 is an associate's degree or an early childhood education Montessori certificate, Waldorf certificate type of thing, or a bachelor's degree in an unrelated field, along with 12 seed early ed credits. That would be an extra $3,500 a year, split between 2 different payouts. Tier 3 is a bachelor's degree or higher and related to early education, or a master's degree or higher in an unrelated field, and 24 seed hours of training. This would be a seed level 10 or higher. And that would be $5,000 a year, again, split between 2 different checks, 6 months spread out. So the goal in these tiers is that we have staff members who apply for the first round, and hopefully when they apply for the second round, they've moved up in their tiers. That's our goal, is to see a little bit of movement in the upward direction, because when we get our staff members to tier 2, where they're at seed level higher than 7. Once you're seed level 7, you can actually be a CCA, a childcare associate, which means that if your administrator is not in the building, they can keep the program open. You're required to have one of those per every 30 kids you have in your care. So if we want to expand programs, we need more CCAs locally. Petersburg takes a lot of pride in growing our own. This is a way to do it. Does that kind of answer those tiered questions? Okay. And you have all have the same thing. We've been sending the same. This has not been changed since the spring. You've seen it.
Any other questions? Well, there, Member Feinwolf.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to start by thanking you guys for all the work you've done. This is really exciting stuff. You know, and as I said earlier, I think early childhood education is a crucial responsibility of the community, and we need to step up and do something here, help our people out. So I do have a couple questions though. First of all, as I understand it, so this is intended to sort of defray the costs of keeping up with these continuing educational requirements. You know, which, yeah, I know that can be a pain. It's kind of expensive. And is that it? Does it just cover the cost of the education, or is it meant to be like an incentive bonus type thing as well? Or how does it compare to the cost?
I guess I can address that one. It is actually brought from the Share Coalition as an idea, actually from one of our community education or community my mind's cafes. There we go. Community cafe came out of that. So it wasn't just the Share Coalition, it was other community members that came in to address also the severely low pay that childcare providers are getting. That it was kind of the incentive, have them educated, even more educated than they are, and then also bringing them closer to what you could go into the school district and work as an aide at. It's still not near where they should be, but it is more of an incentive to help raise their cost a little bit of pay.
Any other input, Member Newman?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great thing. I appreciate all the work you guys have done. You know, Petersburg is known for our great schools. And I feel like, you know, our early childhood education program has been lacking. And I think that we need to use this money towards that. I think it's a great investment in our little people. They need it. They need all the help they can get. And our role as assembly members is to encourage and incentivize the private sector in ways that will benefit society. And I feel like this is a good use of those funds. I will be voting in support of this.
Any other input by assembly members? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks to everybody who's working on that task force. It's a lot of work. Sometimes it doesn't seem like anybody else is listening, but dedicated few are there. I'm gonna be voting for this. You know, I don't think this is gonna solve all the problems with childcare. I think this is, like I've said from the beginning several years ago, when there were the childcare facilities weren't up to keeping up with people being sick and stuff, and people weren't able to go to work. And without reliable childcare and that 81% turnover in the childcare industry, it's tough. You just can't take care of our kids if nobody's staying around to teach them. I talked to the folks that run the lunch program last week, and that's an eye-opening experience too with our little kids. I mean, they're serving like 180 breakfasts every morning to kids who are hungry. And that goes on breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're feeding kids who are hungry. And I think the borough's been long lacking in supporting childcare. I mean, this is a good opportunity to use some of this ARPA funds that were given to us by the federal government. Because eventually the borough, we're all gonna have to pay for childcare when the ARPA money kind of goes away, and we're gonna have to decide how bad we want to support childcare. I was also looking at some numbers for a couple of programs that we do in town here, the senior citizen sales tax incentive. That's $300,000 a year that we're missing out on for people over 65 who aren't paying sales taxes. So, you know, we're supporting the seniors on the top end of this, but we need to make sure that we step up and take care of the kids here. And I'm looking forward to seeing how many people actually take advantage of this program and see how it all works and see if it stops at 81% turnover and just helps this process along, because it's going to be several years before we see how it all works. So yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I'm definitely going to vote for it. Thank you.
Any other input?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I want to compliment everybody that's put a lot of man hours into this. I'm going to definitely be supporting it. I understand that the problem is something that we just can't necessarily solve here by ourselves in Petersburg, and the ultimate solution will require assistance from the state and from the federal government. But that said, I think a lot of times some of the best ideas come out locally. And I think this is a good idea. It's been tested in Juneau. It seems to be working there. And I don't see any reason why it won't work here in Petersburg. Several of our other sister communities in the region have had a long history of supporting childcare. And I think it's time for this community or this borough to step up to the plate and start doing that as well. This is an excellent opportunity. We might not have money like this in the future, but I think the time to start this was 10 years ago, but we can start it now. And once again, I want to thank everybody for all the hard work they've put onto this.
Any other
Thanks.
input from assembly members? No, I'm supportive of this idea, and we've got the $40,000 that was grant money from the federal government. I'd probably have a different point of view if it was money that we'd had to take out of our general fund or find a way to raise it. But I think this is a good way to start this program and hopefully get, you know, the ball rolling. And thanks for all your help. And talk with the manager who's on this task force. He was saying the task force is already looking at future funding ideas. So this is, you know, if we don't start it and we have the money to start it, you know, we won't know if it'll work or not. So I will be in support of this evening. If there's no other input, will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a 6-1 vote with member Marsh opposed, and that passes. So good luck. Hopefully the program is successful. Item C under new business, 2022 Borough Manager Performance Evaluation Timeline. Clerk Thompson requests amendment and or approval of the attached timeline for Manager Giesbrecht's 2022 performance evaluation, which will now actually be taking place in early 2023, but I thought it was better to wait till after the holidays. But anyway, I would entertain a motion to approve this timeline that the clerk has presented to us.
Second.
Motion made by member Feinwall, seconded by member Mucci. Any discussion? And this is just voting on the timeline. Member Meucci.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, you know, Debbie sent us out the manager evaluation. Are we bound by that? I mean, can we? It's a little, it doesn't really work for me because I don't get a chance to talk to borough department heads to see how the manager is doing, and I just have some concerns about some things. Is it best just to write the concerns down? What's the best way to go about this other than that form that we had? It doesn't seem to flow.
Is
very
there a section on there, and I have to go over it again, we do this every year, well, sometimes we don't, but, Clerk Thompson, to write in your opinions?
Yes, there is.
That's what I thought. And can you go talk to department heads about this specific topic without talking about some of the issues that we have underlying in the community, like a couple of legal issues?
It is a little more difficult since we have some legal things going on this year. It does make it a little more difficult. But I do believe that assembly members that have questions on things other than the legal issues should ask department heads if they are unsure of what their answer is on a question. I mean, I think that's, you know, it is the department heads that work with the manager. And if you have a question, I think you can ask those questions. However, I think you do need to be very careful because of the legal issues that we're dealing with at this time.
Great.
So if there's no other discussion, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the timeline.
Sorry, here we go. Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas, Donna, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Okay, the timeline that the clerk has presented to us passes unanimously. Now, item D, selection of an assembly member to assist myself, Mayor Jensen, in the 2022 Borough Manager Performance Evaluation Conference. Traditionally, the mayor and one other assembly member review and discuss the draft performance evaluation with Manager Giesbrick and determine the content of the final evaluation to be submitted for approval to the assembly. Clerk Thompson requests the assembly select an assembly member to complete this upcoming task. And in the past, it has been the vice mayor, and that would be my suggestion. So I entertain a motion to put names out of assembly members to be part of this evaluation process. Member Meucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to have Assembly Member Tom Fine Walsh be the second person to help the mayor with the evaluation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I guess we don't really need discussion. That's probably not really a discussion item. So clerk, call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark.
No. Okay, so that passes 6-1, and Member Fine Walsh will be part of the discussion with the manager and I. So we have that topic covered this evening. Item E, appointed member at large to the Petersburg Economic Development Council. The Borough Assembly has received one letter of interest from Sarah Fine Walsh to serve as the Assembly's appointed member at large to PEDC. So without objection, I would like to appoint Sarah Fine Walsh to this 3-year term. Any objections? Okay, Ms. Fine Walsh, you are on the PEDC board. And with that being said, I would like to thank help me with this, Brian Lynch, for serving for many, many years on this PEDC board. Communications, item 16. There are no communications listed that I saw, and if there was any, they would be on our website for people to read. Item 17, assembly member discussion items. Item A, Southeast Sea Otter Stakeholder Work Group Quarterly Meeting Summary, and this is by Member Meucci. He requested this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just requested this to be on the agenda. I reported back, I think in mid-September or October about this meeting, and these are the meeting notes that came out of that. It took a while to get them out, obviously, but I just put them in there for folks to read at your leisure. Nothing new, but just, this is the written minutes of the meeting, so I have nothing else
Oh,
to add.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for publishing that.
Yeah.
Assembly member comments. Any assembly members have comments this evening? Turn up your heat, I guess, is the only thing I could think of. Recognitions, any recognitions?
Petersburg Volunteer Fire Department would like to recognize the passing of Michael Moyer. He served with us for 8 years. He joined PVFD in October 2nd, 2014. He served as a firefighter and as emergency medical technician 3. He brought invaluable knowledge and skill and a can-do attitude to our little department, and we were blessed to have him. Our sincere condolences go out to his family and friends. It was a pleasure serving with you, Mike. You will be missed.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins, for that recognition. Any other recognitions? I'd like to recognize the power and light crew for replacing the pole in such quick fashion. I was out of town, I had someone watching my boat. They gave me a call, the power's out. And then he called me, it's back on at your boat, but it's not on at your house. But anyway, it made me feel good that it was back on in 4 hours. So great job. Any other recognitions? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 No one's opposed, I'm sure, so